Once celebrated as a beacon of wit and cultural commentary, Jimmy Kimmel Live has gradually morphed into a platform for narrow political posturing and tired applause lines. No longer the capital of light, it now flickers in the shadow of its own self-importance. Audiences, once charmed by sharp humor, are turning away. They don't want lectures wrapped in punchlines. They want honesty, raw, unscripted, human. And so they shift their attention to podcasts and grassroots YouTube creators, where the voice is unfiltered and the connection real. Facing declining viewership and waning cultural relevance, the show's producers made a bold move. They invited Sylvester Stallone to promote his latest film, a stirring story of a veteran boxer who returns to the ring to mentor the next generation. But Stallone didn't show up to play along with late-night antics. He came with purpose, to challenge ageist tropes, call out media bias, and defend values he believes are being misrepresented. The segment quickly went off-script. Kimmel, confident in the protective cushion of studio lights and curated laughter, tried to twist the encounter into a spectacle, expecting applause for taking jabs at a supposedly outdated star. But Stallone, a veteran of far greater battles than a late-night set, met the moment with quiet power. No shouting, no theatrics, just sharp, composed words, each one landing like a perfectly timed left hook. "This isn't about entertainment anymore," he said, voice steady. "It's about truth." What followed wasn't an interview, it was a reckoning. Kimmel, visibly shaken, realized too late that he wasn't trading barbs with a fading icon. He was sparring with a man who had nothing to prove and everything to stand for. As the studio lights gleamed and tension hummed like a taut string before a title match, Stallone sat firm in the guest chair. Calm, watchful, grounded. Kimmel, gripping his mic with a forced grin, misread the moment. He thought the crowd wanted blood. What they really wanted was honesty. Jimmy Kimmel strode confidently onto the stage, waving to the crowd, his voice vibrant but carefully rehearsed. "Welcome to Jimmy Kimmel Live. Thanks for joining us tonight. We've got something extra special lined up." The audience responded with applause, but it lacked the energy of the show's prime. Kimmel pushed on, his tone animated, yet tinged with sarcasm. And tonight's guest? A legend who's floored everyone from Rocky to Rambo. Give it up for Sylvester Stallone. Stallone emerged to a roar of cheers. Smiling with genuine warmth, he scanned the crowd as chants of Sly rose above the music. Even at nearly 80, his magnetic presence filled the room. Kimmel's face twitched for a second, something between envy and unease. But he quickly hid it behind his trademark grin. They took their seats. Kimmel leaned in, eyes glinting with something sharper than humor. "Sylvester, it's great to have you here to talk about your new boxing movie. But before we get into that, I have to ask, you've played all these American heroes, but in real life, you're friendly with folks like Donald Trump, right?" The question was meant as a jab, calculated to provoke. A few chuckles came from one corner of the audience, but most fell silent. All eyes were on Stallone. He didn't flinch. He simply tilted his head slightly, like a seasoned fighter assessing an opponent. Memories of his early days, the endless rejections, the sacrifices to bring Rocky to life flickered through his mind. This was just another round. Stallone answered calmly, voice low and measured. "Jimmy, if you're trying to pull me into politics, I'll pass. I'd rather talk about what brings people together. This movie isn't about votes. It's about values, struggle, and belief." It hit like a clean jab, precise, controlled, and effective. The audience broke into applause, a few people even standing, catching Kimmel off guard. His smile wavered before snapping back into place. But Kimmel wasn't ready to throw in the towel. He leaned back with a smirk, trying to rally the room. "Oh, come on, Sly. You've been at some pretty conservative events. Sounds like Rambo wants to make America great again." He winked at the crowd, fishing for laughs. There were a few scattered chuckles, but many in the audience shifted uneasily. Some crossed their arms. Others began murmuring, clearly more interested in hearing from Stallone than in watching a political ambush disguised as humor. Stallone smiled again, confident, unbothered. He remembered the thousands of letters from fans over the years, people who said Rocky helped them through cancer, addiction, grief. "Jimmy," he said, voice unwavering, "you know what makes a great movie? When it reaches the heart." The room fell quiet, not from discomfort, but from respect. "I work to inspire, not divide. You should try that sometime." Sylvester Stallone's words struck like a perfectly timed right hook. The studio fell still for a beat, and then erupted. Applause broke out across the crowd. A chant of "Sly, Sly" rippled through the air. Jimmy Kimmel tried to lift his hand to settle the noise, but his eyes gave him away, tight, anxious, and unprepared for the shift in momentum. Pressed against the ropes of his own show, Kimmel forced a laugh, raising his voice, a note of sharpness creeping in. "Come on, Sylvester. I'm just having some fun. But seriously, the audience wants to know, whose side are you on? You can't just keep making movies and pretend the world's not on fire, right?" It was a trap disguised as a question, a baited hook designed to spark a headline or divide the room. Kimmel leaned in, mic clenched, hungry for a reaction. But Stallone didn't blink. He sat taller, his presence solid, his voice steady. "I stand with the people who wake up early, work hard, raise families, and keep believing in something better. My movies are for them, not for people who argue on TV." The words landed hard. Not flashy, not cruel, just real. Like a fighter's punch that doesn't need speed because it carries weight. The audience jumped to its feet. Applause thundered. A woman in the front row pumped her fist like it was Madison Square Garden. Kimmel's expression froze. The show had become a bout of truth versus spin, and the crowd had chosen its fighter. Kimmel smiled, tight-lipped. His next line came forced, trying to regain footing. All right, let's leave politics behind. Let's talk about your career. This new boxing film, isn't it just Rocky X? I mean, come on, people want superheroes now. Not some old-school boxing nostalgia, right?" It was a low blow designed to jab at Stallone's legacy. Laughter rippled, but it didn't spread. The audience sensed the dig. Their attention returned to Stallone, watching not for spectacle, but for heart. He smiled, not in defense, but with the calm of someone who'd already been dismissed by Hollywood and refused to stay down. He remembered riding Rocky in a tiny apartment, broke and rejected, clinging to belief. Kimmel's jab was just another round in a much longer fight. He leaned forward, his voice deep and deliberate. "You think boxing films are outdated? Then go tell the people who watched Rocky after losing a job or fighting cancer that they don't matter. This new film isn't about fists, it's about heart." The crowd roared. Applause exploded again. Some shouted, "Rocky," like they were at a title match. Kimmel recoiled slightly, his smile faltering before snapping back into its usual smirk. Trying again, he laughed loudly, voice tinged with sarcasm. "Look, I'm not saying Rocky wasn't great. But let's be honest, you made this movie to cash in on loyal fans, right? I mean, who really cares anymore about big guys punching each other in a ring?" The insult was surgical, meant to cut deep, to reduce a legacy to a marketing gimmick. A few forced laughs emerged, but most of the audience didn't move. They weren't laughing anymore. And Stallone? He just sat there strong, centered, unshaken. Because he knew the difference between entertainment and impact, between a joke and a legacy. The laughter in the studio was weak, scattered, uneasy. It couldn't drown out the murmurs of discomfort rippling through the crowd. One man shook his head, leaning toward his friend. "Kimmel doesn't get it." Across from the host, Sylvester Stallone sat unshaken. His eyes locked on Kimmel, calm but penetrating like a man who'd seen through the act. In his heart, Stallone thought of the countless letters he'd received over the decades, stories from fans who overcame cancer, grief, addiction, failure, all because Rocky had taught them how to get back up. He smiled slightly, then spoke, not loud, but with power. "Jimmy, you know why people still watch my movies? Because they see themselves in them. People who've been knocked down but refuse to stay there. My new movie? It's for them. Not for people who sit back and judge." The words hit like an uppercut. Not flashy, but devastating. The audience exploded in applause. A young woman stood up with her phone, recording, shouting, "That's Sly." Kimmel tried to steady himself, forcing a laugh, but his voice cracked slightly as he leaned forward. "Oh, Sylvester, sure, well said," he said with an awkward grin. "But come on, today's audiences want tech, CGI, superhero stuff. Not sappy old boxing stories, right?" The desperation was obvious. A last-ditch jab from a cornered fighter. A few laughed politely, but most sat still, waiting to hear what Stallone would say next. And he didn't miss a beat. "Jimmy," Stallone said, sitting tall, "technology doesn't make a story, humanity does. My films remind people they're stronger than they think. Can you say that about your show?" It landed like a thunderous blow. The crowd roared again. A man in the back row pumped his fist. Others shouted "Sly," as if watching the final round of a championship fight. Kimmel flinched. He laughed nervously and shifted in his chair. Look, Sylvester, no one's saying you're not a legend, he said, the smile forced and brittle. But you're almost 80, still playing a boxer. Doesn't that feel? I don't know. A bit much? People want young, fresh stars, not guys who were fighting in movies before I was born. It was a low blow, aimed at age, not talent. A few laughed half-heartedly, but many in the audience muttered under their breath. One elderly woman shook her head. Kimmel doesn't know what he's talking about, she whispered. Stallone simply smirked, unmoved. In his mind flashed memories of 4 a.m. runs, relentless gym sessions, years of proving doubters wrong. Kimmel's jab? Just another echo in a chorus he'd overcome. With a touch of humor in his voice, Stallone replied, Jimmy, I still lift more than you, and I bet I can outrun you too. The crowd erupted. Laughter, applause, cheers. A man in the front row yelled, knock him out, Sly. The atmosphere turned electric. Kimmel fumbled to recover. Okay, he said, raising his hands, tone dripping sarcasm. But come on. These days it's about Hemsworth, not has-beens. The jab fell flat. Weak laughter, scattered boos. The audience wasn't buying it anymore. Stallone sat forward, eyes blazing, his voice full and steady. Jimmy, the audience doesn't care how old I am. They care that I don't give up. My movie isn't about muscles, it's about never backing down, no matter your age. I live that. Another eruption of cheers. A young woman stood, fist raised, chanting Sly, as she recorded on her phone. An older man wiped his eyes. In this studio, it wasn't a celebrity interview. It was a moment of truth. Kimmel leaned forward again, voice rising, the pressure cracking through his polish. All right, sure, you're a legend. But playing a hero at your age? Doesn't that get exhausting? People want something new, not an icon from the 80s. It wasn't a question, it was desperation. The crowd's discontent grew. Kimmel looked around for support and found little. Stallone didn't pause. Tired? Jimmy, I wake up every day to fight, not to rest. My fans don't need me young. They need me real. Can you say that about yourself? The studio burst again. Applause rolled across the room. Someone shouted, well said, as more people stood. The tension snapped like a broken rope. Kimmel's hands gripped the mic. His voice trembled. Okay. You sure know how to fire up a crowd. But his confidence was gone, and Stallone saw it. He leaned in, voice low but cutting. You know why the audience is here, Jimmy? They want inspiration. They want hope. But you use this stage to divide them, to push your views and call it comedy. A silence fell, brief but thunderous. Then came the storm. Applause. Cheers. The room surged with energy. One woman near the front raised her hand high, tears in her eyes. Kimmel tried one last defense, voice cracking. Hey, Sylvester, I'm just doing my job. I make people laugh. That's all. But the crowd wasn't laughing. They were watching a man crumble, one who thought he could win with smug lines, now outclassed by sincerity. A young man in the audience leaned over and whispered, Kimmel's out of moves. Stallone stood tall, steady, his presence radiating conviction. He didn't need to say anything more. He'd already won. Kimmel never saw it coming. Still clinging to mockery as a tool, he failed to understand the value of the people in front of him. But Stallone did. Turning toward the audience, Stallone's voice rose, not in anger, but in truth, like a declaration forged from decades of grit. Jimmy, the audience isn't your prop for ratings. They're working parents, fighters, dreamers. I make films to honor them. What do? Turn them into punchlines for cheap laughs. The words hit hard, fierce, and uncompromising, like a finishing blow. The crowd erupted to its feet, applause cascading like a tidal wave, drowning out the studio music. Kimmel stood frozen, pale, hands trembling as he clutched the mic. He tried to respond, voice cracking with desperation. Sylvester, no, you've got it wrong. I love the audience. I just want them to have fun. But it was too late. Boos rained down. Whistles pierced the air. A young woman shouted from the back, Jimmy, you're done. He scanned the crowd, pleading eyes searching for support. All he found were disappointed faces, crossed arms, and heads shaking in disapproval. The audience had turned. Stallone didn't gloat. His eyes remained steady, his voice calm and warm as he stepped toward the edge of the stage. I didn't come here to fight Jimmy, he said. I came here for you. The people who've stood with me since Rocky. You deserve respect, not ridicule. It felt less like a comeback and more like a farewell speech from a champion. Sincere, grounded, unforgettable. The audience stood as one, some clapping, some wiping tears. The emotion was real, the applause relentless. Behind him, Kimmel slumped into his chair, the mic falling to his lap. His lips moved, but made no sound. He stared forward, hollow-eyed, like a boxer dazed by a hit he never saw coming. Stallone didn't look back. He raised a hand to the audience, nodded once in gratitude, and walked off the set, refusing to continue the interview. The crowd watched him go in reverent silence, then broke into cheers. Jimmy Kimmel sat alone, trying to speak, but the studio had already moved on. The cameras caught him lowering his head, stunned and speechless. That same night, Stallone posted a short video on social media. He stood in front of his iconic gym, the streetlights glowing behind him. His voice was steady, sincere. "I don't make movies for fame," he said. "I make them for you. The people who fight every day just to keep going. Stay united. Stay strong." Within hours, the clip went viral. Fans flooded the comments with stories. Veterans, single parents, cancer survivors, all sharing how Stallone, or Rocky, helped them through the hardest moments of their lives. One post stood out. "Sly spoke for us. All of us." Stallone's studio knockout sends shockwaves through ABC in the wake of the explosive interview. A student's post went viral. "Jimmy Kimmel doesn't deserve to speak to Sylvester Stallone." It wasn't just a moment, it was a movement. Sylvester Stallone's takedown of Kimmel wasn't about ego or celebrity. It became a declaration of respect, one aimed squarely at the everyday people who watch, work, and believe in something greater. As the studio lights dimmed and Stallone walked off stage, he left more than just a stunned talk show host behind. He left a message. Kimmel, visibly defeated, became the embodiment of what critics see in modern media: shallow, performative, and disconnected. Meanwhile, Stallone's dignity, humility, and authenticity resonated like thunder far beyond the studio walls. The aftershocks hit fast. Within hours, Stallone's post-show video, filmed outside his iconic gym, calling for unity and honoring everyday resilience, racked up millions of views. Platforms like YouTube, TikTok, and X, formerly Twitter, were flooded with support. Users shared personal stories. "Sly speaks for us," one veteran wrote. Another simply posted, "Rocky won again." But while the public celebrated Stallone, chaos erupted behind the scenes at ABC. Inside the network's Los Angeles headquarters, panic set in. Executives had invited Stallone hoping to spark a ratings boost. What they got instead was a public relations earthquake. And the numbers didn't lie. By morning, the damage was clear. Jimmy Kimmel Live had suffered its worst ratings drop in show history, down 35% overnight. Sponsors acted swiftly. Major brands from beverage companies to lifestyle labels pulled their ad placements in droves. A marketing director for a major sponsor sent a blistering statement to ABC. "We cannot associate with a show that mocks its own audience." In a closed-door emergency meeting, tempers flared. "We brought in Stallone to save this show," one executive barked, slamming a hand on the table. Not for Kimmel to turn it into a disaster. All eyes turned to the production team, who had no defense. Then came the leak. A frustrated junior producer, long at odds with Kimmel's increasingly politicized tone, released a damning internal audio recording to the press. In the clip, Kimmel could be heard lashing out after the taping. "If you people hadn't booked Stallone, I wouldn't have had to face that guy." The internet exploded. Memes showed Kimmel flat on the mat, dazed and defeated, while Stallone, stylized in vintage Rocky gear, stood victorious, arms raised. One viral post read, "Kimmel thought he was clever. Stallone taught him self-respect." ABC scrambled to regain control. Top executives held a second emergency session. The proposal? A formal, public apology, and a lucrative new offer to bring Stallone back on the show to promote his film The Story of a Veteran Fighter, a tale of grit and mentorship. An executive was dispatched to contact Stallone's team. The offer, a high seven-figure sum and full editorial control over the segment. But what they didn't realize was this: Stallone had already won. Stallone's silence speaks volumes as Kimmel's empire crumbles. ABC's desperate attempt to repair the fallout was swiftly rejected. Through his representative, Sylvester Stallone delivered a firm and final message. ABC's apology isn't sincere. "I don't need their stage to speak to the audience." The statement, concise and cutting, quickly leaked online, and it only strengthened public admiration for Stallone. One viral post summed up the sentiment perfectly. Sly doesn't sell his honor. Kimmel and ABC should learn from that. With his back against the wall, Jimmy Kimmel tried damage control. Appearing visibly drained on the next broadcast, his voice unsteady, he attempted an apology. Last night, I may have gone too far with Sylvester Stallone. I respect him, and I respect this audience. I hope you'll give me another chance. But the words fell flat. The studio audience sat in cold silence. A few even whistled in protest. Online, the backlash intensified. One post on X, formerly Twitter, received hundreds of thousands of likes. Kimmel's apologizing because he has to, not because he means it. Too late, Jimmy. The hashtag cancel Kimmel began trending within hours. Behind the scenes at ABC, internal tensions exploded. A group of younger staffers, frustrated by Kimmel's arrogance for years, refused to return for the next episode. Production stalled. An anonymous sound technician posted a scathing message online. Kimmel attacks guests for clicks and ignores the advice of his team. This isn't new. It's just finally public. The post went viral, further fueling the fire. Major entertainment outlets joined the storm. The Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, and Variety all published analyses predicting that ABC may soon be forced to replace Kimmel altogether. One Variety headline read, "A self-inflicted disaster. Kimmel underestimated Stallone and the loyalty of the people." Meanwhile, Stallone remained completely unfazed. He was spotted at a local Los Angeles gym, training as usual. A fan captured a brief video of him lifting weights and encouraging young athletes. The footage spread quickly, accompanied by captions like, "Sly doesn't need to respond. His actions say it all." Online, an avalanche of praise followed. A father posted a video of his son watching Rocky, writing, "I showed him this to teach what perseverance looks like." A woman shared how Stallone's new film helped her overcome grief, describing him as a symbol of resilience and truth in an era of media manipulation. As the fallout grew, ABC and its parent company Disney began considering drastic measures. Insiders revealed that high-level discussions were underway to quietly introduce a new host, someone less controversial, more aligned with the network's brand. But by then, the damage was done. Sponsors continued their exodus. Ratings dropped another 10% in just days. The show's once loyal audience had vanished. Kimmel, now isolated, became the face of the backlash, both inside the studio and across the entertainment industry. One commentator captured the shift best. Kimmel thought he controlled the narrative. But Sly reminded him, it's the audience that decides who's worth listening to. What started as a promotional interview had become something far bigger, a cultural reckoning, a media storm, and a clear reminder that authenticity always hits harder than artifice. In the aftermath of his widely praised appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live, Sylvester Stallone emerged not just as a Hollywood legend, but as a voice for a disillusioned audience tired of politicized entertainment. His calm yet commanding takedown of Kimmel sparked a cultural wave, turning Stallone into a symbol of self-respect, humility, and authenticity in an industry many see as out of touch. While Jimmy Kimmel and ABC spiraled into a crisis, Stallone's short video calling for unity and respect for the audience went viral, garnering tens of millions of views within days. From X to TikTok, Instagram to Facebook, the message resonated across all platforms. It wasn't just a media moment, it was a movement. Fans flooded social media with personal stories. A mother from Ohio posted a heartfelt video about watching Rocky with her son whenever life felt too hard. His words on Kimmel gave us strength again, she said. The clip garnered thousands of shares, many calling Stallone a real-life hero. A veteran in Texas posted a photo of himself beside a Rambo poster, captioned, "Stallone gets us. Kimmel doesn't." One student shared that Stallone's new boxing film, the story of a veteran fighter, helped him overcome bullying. An office worker wrote that the actor's spirit reminded her not to give up during a difficult divorce. These weren't just fans. They were people seeing their struggles reflected on screen. People who felt hurt. Each post added to the growing mosaic of admiration for Stallone, a man now viewed not just as a movie star, but as a cultural force. As Variety noted in a feature-length analysis, Kimmel's mistake wasn't just attacking Stallone. It was underestimating the audience's loyalty to a man who's been fighting for them on screen for decades. Even media outlets typically aligned with Kimmel admitted the error. The Washington Post acknowledged Kimmel had misread the moment. A CNN commentator, while noting political differences with Stallone, said simply, "Kimmel picked the wrong opponent." Stallone won with sincerity. Hollywood insiders also rallied behind him. Actor Jon Voight praised Stallone in a video, calling him a voice for the forgotten. Shazam! Star Zachary Levi tweeted, "Sly reminds us that the audience is everything." Even Marvel actor Mark Ruffalo, often on the opposite side politically, posted, "Despite our differences, I admire Stallone for putting the people first." This wave of support turned Stallone into more than a viral moment. He became the face of a broader call to return entertainment to its roots, connection, inspiration, and shared humanity. Days later, Stallone appeared on the Greg Gutfeld Show, a friendlier platform, to talk about his new film. In a relaxed setting, he reflected on his career and the making of the movie. "I don't make films for praise," he said, voice rich with sincerity. "I make them to remind people they're stronger than they think." The studio audience rose in a standing ovation. The interview clip hit over 1 million views in 24 hours, eclipsing Kimmel's entire week of broadcasts. A top comment read, "Sly on Gutfeld is gold. Kimmel? Irrelevant." As Stallone soared, Kimmel sank further into crisis. Reports from the Rap and Entertainment Weekly suggested Jimmy Kimmel Live might not survive the year if ratings continued to drop. Viewership had plummeted. Sponsors were vanishing. And now, high-profile guests were quietly declining appearances, wanting no part in the fallout. Even Kimmel's defenders were dwindling. One widely shared post captured the shift. "Kimmel used to be funny. Now he's just a smug guy insulting the audience." Just weeks after their infamous clash, the contrast couldn't be more striking. Stallone had become a symbol of loyalty and integrity. Kimmel had become a cautionary tale of arrogance and miscalculation. At the premiere of his new film, Stallone stood before the crowd, raising his hand in greeting. His voice, deep and steady, echoed through the mic not as a performer speaking to fans, but as a man speaking to people who saw him as one of their own. And in that moment, it was clear, Stallone hadn't just won an argument. He'd reclaimed the soul of entertainment. "I made this movie for you, the ones who never give up." With that single line, Sylvester Stallone ignited something deeper than applause. His words spread like wildfire. Across gyms, schools, offices, and construction sites, his quote was reposted everywhere. "Dreams don't have an age, only the courage to fight." It wasn't just a message. It was a movement. Audiences connected with Stallone not just because of his film's emotional weight, but because they saw a man standing up for them, against mockery, against elitism, and against the very media figures who had lost touch with the people they once entertained. Ticket sales for his new boxing film soared, shattering records. Meanwhile, Jimmy Kimmel faced the collapse of everything he built. In the days following Stallone's viral moment, Jimmy Kimmel Live suffered another crushing blow, a 15% ratings drop, on top of an already historic plunge. Sponsors bailed. Viewers vanished. Disney, ABC's parent company, held emergency meetings about finding a replacement, someone less divisive, someone who hadn't alienated his own audience. The media began calling it what it was, a career implosion. Forbes labeled Kimmel a self-destroyer, while Entertainment Weekly warned the show might not survive the year. Kimmel tried to pivot, avoiding all mention of Stallone, but it only made things worse. A tasteless joke about outdated action movies fell flat. The audience stayed silent. Some even walked out mid-show. Stallone, in stark contrast, began forging a new legacy. He announced an upcoming interview series on Rumble, a free speech platform, where he'd speak directly with everyday Americans, workers, athletes, educators, artists. "I want to hear your stories," Stallone said in a video shot in his gym. Hollywood needs to remember, the audience is everything. Even before launch, the project attracted millions of followers and thousands of comments like, "Sly's going to outshine every talk show on TV." While Kimmel became a symbol of arrogance and disconnection, Stallone reminded the industry and the country of entertainment's core value, respect for the people. He wasn't chasing clout. He was championing sincerity. Even as media coverage flooded in, Stallone remained humble. At a Philadelphia charity event raising funds for community gyms, he smiled when asked about Kimmel and simply replied, "I don't think about the past. I think about the people who need me now." The video, captured by a fan, went viral. "That's why Sly's a legend," one user wrote. From military veterans in Texas to bullied students in Ohio, stories continued pouring in. A father teaching his son to box. A young woman overcoming depression through the strength she found in Rocky. The impact was real and far-reaching. Even the media began acknowledging the broader implications. As Variety put it, Stallone didn't win by arguing politics. He won by honoring his audience. Kimmel lost because he forgot them. The showdown between Sylvester Stallone and Jimmy Kimmel exposed a deeper fracture in American culture, the growing divide between media elites and the viewers they claim to serve. And Stallone's response? Stay grounded. Speak with heart. Respect those who show up. The fallout was undeniable. Hashtag cancel Kimmel trended for days. His loyal fan base dwindled. High-profile guests declined appearances, and sponsors kept pulling out. But Stallone didn't gloat. He focused forward. He became a symbol of hope in a time of division, a reminder that real leadership isn't about dominating the stage, but about knowing who you stand for. The final takeaway? In a polarized world, connection must come before confrontation. As Stallone showed, the real strength lies not in shouting your views, but in listening, persevering, and putting people first. That's how trust is earned. That's how unity is built. So here's the challenge. Be sincere. Be grounded. Be like Stallone. Subscribe to the channel to celebrate real values and stay inspired by those who lead with respect, not ego. Thanks for watching. And remember, dreams don't have an age, only the courage to fight.